When you think of Rome, you probably picture emperors, Augustus, Nero, men in purple robes ruling millions. The image of Rome as a mighty empire led by all-powerful rulers is burned into our collective imagination. But that's only part of the story, and perhaps not even the most fascinating part. For centuries before the emperors, Rome was something entirely different. It was a republic, a society where power was supposed to rest with the people and their representatives, not a single man. The city was run by elected officials, guided by a complex web of laws and traditions. Senators debated fiercely, and citizens voted on important issues. The idea was that no one person could dominate, and that the state belonged to everyone. Over nearly 500 years, this system allowed Rome to transform from a small, vulnerable city-state into a Mediterranean superpower. The Republic's institutions, its checks and balances, and its sense of shared purpose fueled an astonishing rise. But as Rome grew, so did its problems. The very structures that once made it strong began to buckle under the weight of new challenges. Vast wealth, foreign wars, and a population that was more diverse and divided than ever before. In just about 100 years, the Republic unraveled. Political drama and bitter rivalries erupted into violence. Civil wars tore the city apart, and ambitious generals saw opportunities to seize power for themselves. The system, designed for a small community, simply couldn't cope with the demands of a sprawling multicultural empire. The old ways of doing things no longer worked, and the cracks began to show everywhere, from the Senate to the streets. Gradually, the ideals of civic duty and shared power faded. People began to look for strong leaders who promised order and security, even if it meant giving up their own freedoms. This is the story of how ambition, inequality, and the longing for stability led Romans to trade the messy freedom of the Republic for the certainty of a single ruler. It's a story of choices, consequences, and the slow erosion of an idea. It's about more than Julius Caesar or any one man. It's about the gradual, almost invisible death of a system that once inspired the world. So how did a centuries-old republic, built on ideals of liberty and shared power, fall apart so spectacularly? Let's find out together. The Roman Republic was built on a foundation of checks and balances, a system carefully crafted to avoid the rise of a single all-powerful ruler. The founders of Rome, having witnessed the dangers of monarchy, wanted to ensure that no one person could dominate the state or threaten the freedom of its citizens. To prevent any one person from gaining too much power, Rome divided authority among several offices and institutions. The idea was that ambition would be kept in check by ambition, and that the state would be protected from tyranny. At the top, 2 consuls were elected each year. They shared executive authority equally, each holding the power to veto the other's decisions. This meant that no single consul could act unilaterally, and both had to cooperate to govern effectively. The Senate, composed of Rome's most influential and experienced citizens, advised on policy, managed foreign affairs, and controlled the state's finances. Senators debated the direction of the Republic, shaping its laws and priorities. Their influence came not from written law, but from tradition, social standing, and immense wealth. The Senate's authority was rooted in centuries of custom, giving it a powerful, if unofficial, grip on the Republic. Ordinary citizens, known as plebeians, were not left out. They had their own assemblies where they could vote on laws and elect officials to represent their interests. This gave the common people a voice in government. The most important of these officials were the tribunes of the plebs. Tribunes had the extraordinary power to veto any government action, protecting the people from abuses by the elite. This system created a delicate balance between the consuls, the Senate, and the tribunes, blending executive, aristocratic, and popular power. Each group could limit the others, ensuring no single faction could dominate. For a small city-state, this arrangement worked remarkably well. Power was spread out, ambition was checked, and the Republic thrived on cooperation and competition. But as Rome's territory expanded, conquering new lands and peoples, the delicate balance of power began to strain under the weight of a growing empire. The system, designed for a city of a few thousand, was never meant to govern millions across continents. The old ways struggled to keep up with new realities. Economic inequality grew, social tensions mounted, and the pressures of governing a vast, diverse population pushed the Republic's institutions to their limits. The old rules and traditions that had once kept Rome stable were about to be overwhelmed by forces they could not contain. Rome was not ready for what came next. the Republic's carefully balanced system was about to face its greatest test, and the consequences would shape the course of history. As Rome conquered new lands, its society changed in ways the founders never imagined. The citizen farmer, once the backbone of the army, was ruined by long wars and debt. Wealthy elites bought up land, creating massive slave-run plantations. Small farmers lost out, flooding Rome as a desperate, unemployed urban mob. The military suffered too, only property owners could serve, but fewer citizens owned land. Rome faced economic inequality, a volatile urban population, and a shrinking army. The state grew richer, but its foundation was crumbling. By the mid-2nd century BCE, Rome was in crisis. The old republican system couldn't handle these deep problems. The stage was set for reformers and ambitious generals to step in. Change was coming, one way or another. Into this crisis stepped the Gracchus brothers, Tiberius and Gaius. Tiberius, elected tribune in 133 BCE, pushed for land reform, redistributing public land to the poor. The common people loved it. The elite hated it. Tiberius broke tradition to force his law through, making powerful enemies. When he sought re-election, violence erupted. He and hundreds of followers were killed by a senatorial mob. A decade later, Gaius Gracchus revived reform, adding subsidized grain and jobs for the poor. He was even more popular, and more feared. The Senate declared a state of emergency. Gaius died, and thousands of his supporters were executed. The Gracchi showed that compromise was dead. Political violence had become the new normal. The Republic's system was breaking down. The stakes were only getting higher. The military crisis deepened until Gaius Marius, a new man, changed everything. In 107 BCE, Marius opened the army to all citizens, not just landowners. The poor flocked to join, seeking pay and land. Soldiers now served their general, not the state. Loyalty shifted. Generals became political power brokers. The Senate, wary of powerful generals, often refused to reward veterans. Generals like Marius had to fight for their soldiers' rights, using their armies as leverage. The army became a tool for personal ambition. From now on, any general with a loyal army could threaten the state. The Republic's greatest strength had become its greatest danger. Rome would never be the same. Marius's precedent led to Sulla, his ambitious former lieutenant. In 88 BCE, a dispute over military command erupted. Sulla marched his army on Rome, a shocking first. The army meant to defend Rome was now a weapon in political conflict. Sulla seized the city, then left for war. Marius returned, sparking bloody purges. Sulla came back, won a civil war, and made himself dictator, without a term limit. He unleashed proscriptions, lists of enemies to be killed, their property seized. Thousands died. Sulla claimed to restore the Republic, but ruled by terror. He eventually retired, but the damage was done. Sulla proved a general could seize total control. The taboo was broken. The Republic would never recover its old balance. The age of warlords had begun. After Sulla, Rome was fractured and violent. Real power now came from armies and personal loyalty. Three men, Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar, formed the first triumvirate, an unofficial alliance. Pompey brought military glory, Crassus brought wealth, Caesar brought political skill and popular support. Together they dominated Rome, sidelining the Senate. Caesar became consul, passed laws for his allies, and secured a command in Gaul. There he built his own loyal army. The triumvirate ran Rome for their own interests, not the Republic's. Their alliance kept a fragile peace, but it was built on ambition, not law. The Republic was now a playground for powerful men. The stage was set for an even bigger conflict. For nearly a decade, Julius Caesar waged relentless campaigns across Gaul, transforming himself from a skilled general into a living legend. His victories were not just military triumphs, they made him a household name throughout Rome and its provinces, celebrated in stories and songs. Through hardship and glory, he forged a fiercely loyal army, men who would follow him anywhere, bound by shared hardship and the promise of glory. Meanwhile, back in Rome, the political alliance known as the First Triumvirate began to unravel. Crassus, Caesar's powerful ally, was killed in battle, leaving a dangerous power vacuum. Pompey, once Caesar's friend and partner, now saw him as a rival. Their alliance shattered, and Pompey sided with the Senate against Caesar. Alarmed by Caesar's growing influence and the loyalty of his legions, the Senate demanded that he disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, stripped of power and protection. Caesar now faced an impossible choice: surrender and risk humiliation, exile, or even death, or defy the Senate and risk plunging Rome into civil war. In 49 BCE, with a single fateful decision, Caesar led his army across the Rubicon River. "The die is cast," he declared, knowing there was no turning back. His march on Rome ignited a civil war that would change history. Caesar's legions, hardened by years of conquest, swept aside their enemies with ruthless efficiency, defeating every force sent against them. Pompey fled the city, only to meet his end in Egypt. With his rivals gone, Caesar was named dictator, first for 10 years, then for life. He began ambitious reforms to reshape Rome, but his unprecedented power alarmed many senators, who feared he would destroy the Republic and make himself king. In 44 BCE, a group of conspirators struck. On the Ides of March, they assassinated Caesar in the Senate, believing his death would restore the old order. The assassins hoped to save the Republic and return Rome to its former glory. Instead, their actions unleashed chaos. Riots and violence erupted in the streets, and the city was thrown into turmoil. The Republic was mortally wounded. Civil war broke out once more, tearing Rome apart as rival factions fought for control. The old system of government, built on debate and tradition, was finished, shattered beyond repair. Now, Rome's fate would be decided by force of arms, not by words or laws. The age of emperors was dawning, and Rome would never be the same again. Caesar's death led to 13 more years of civil war. His supporters, led by Mark Antony and Octavian, defeated the assassins, then turned on each other. Antony allied with Cleopatra in the east, Octavian consolidated power in the west. Octavian used propaganda, painting Antony as a traitor to Roman values. Romans, exhausted by war, longed for peace and stability. In 31 BCE, Octavian's forces defeated Antony and Cleopatra at Actium. Octavian became the sole master of Rome. The civil wars were over, but so was the Republic. Octavian avoided Caesar's mistakes. He restored the forms of the Republic, but kept all real power. The Senate named him Augustus, the revered one. He called himself first citizen, but he controlled the armies, treasury, and provinces. The Republic was gone in all but name. The Roman Empire had begun.